was given 10 to 20 years in the Indiana Reformatory at Pendleton. Conflicting stories are told of Dillinger here. The probably true one is that his conduct in the reformatory was so outrageous that the authorities were compelled to send him to a place where discipline was more rigorous and where prison severity might teach him the folly and futility of crime as a career. What he learned in this new place of detention were the vicious secrets and habits of hardened criminals. This was in the penitentiary at Michigan City, where he remained until paroled in June 1933. Let us see where this arch-foe of society sprang from. While his father ran this grocery store in Indianapolis in 1902, John Dillinger was born. The little house seems to give promise of everything. Here, 3 years later, Dillinger's mother, considering the gorilla her son turned out to be, John Dillinger's father was and is a respected citizen of Morgan County. Everyone liked him, and today everyone sympathizes with him. There's nothing but sorrow ahead for the old man. His son has taken the road to doom. From the homely shelter of this little farm, John Dillinger left to become the menace any officer would be justified in killing like a mad dog. A criminal and a fool, for John Dillinger is not smart. Only a fool thinks that crime pays. Crime never pays. John should have learned that simple truth in the Friends Church where he went as a boy, but he was too dumb. And so, 9 years after his first crime, he came out of jail just to get back in again at my home. In his 4 months of liberty, Dillinger had identified himself as the leader in bank robberies in New Carlisle, Ohio, Farrell, Pennsylvania, Indianapolis, and Bluffton, Ohio. In Lyon, he was to stand trial for the Bluffton robbery. This was in September 1933. But 2 days before Dillinger landed in the Lima jail, 10 men, jail friends of Dillinger, shot their way out of Michigan City Penitentiary. Dillinger had engineered this place from the outside and had caused guns to be thrown over the walls to be picked up by the plotting desperados. Among the jailbreakers were 4 men of whom we'll hear later: Pierpont, Mackley, Clark, and Hamilton. These men seized a passing overcar, forced the occupants out, and sped away. No one knows their exact route, but Michigan City and its prison lay behind them, and the devil's dance was about to begin, and they were going to start. They arrived at the Lima jail 5 days later. Representing themselves as Indiana officers, the quartet demanded Dillinger. Failing to get him, they murdered Sheriff Sarver, whose son, the present sheriff, sits on the steps in this picture. They secured the keys and promptly released their pack. The 5 escaped through this side door and down the sidewalk, screened from the street by bushes, leaped into an automobile at the curb, and fled. The wild game was on. Crime hyenas were loose. Scene shift to Tucson, Arizona, 11 days later. In this house, Dillinger was found and arrested. Again, 4 months had passed since Dillinger had left jail. These officers had him safe enough, however, and his arsenal as well. Arrested also were Pierpont, Mackley, and Clark, due to their own stupidity. The 3 bandits were living at the Congress Hotel when they caught fire. Mackley and Clark offered the firemen $12 to carry out their bunks. In their rooms, the firemen saw their guns, scrutinized the thugs, recognized them, and tipped off the police. Congratulations poured in on police. Court formalities were soon over, and Dillinger was flown by plane toward the cell yawning for him at Crown Point, Indiana, where he was to face the charge of murder in the slaying of O'Malley in East Chicago. The long arm of the law had reached John Dillinger, and he took his first ride in an airplane chained to it. In talking to reporters in Tucson, Dillinger admitted that he helped fix the jailbreak at Michigan City and tried to justify it because they were friends. I stick to my friends, he said, and they stick to me. But sticking to that sort of friends landed Dillinger back in Chicago on January which looked okay, and it certainly looked mighty tough for the boastful, loudmouth Mr. John Dillinger. The third person to be made the oath by Dillinger at Crown Point, besides Still and Mrs. Holly, was Judge William Murray, who refused to transfer Dillinger from Crown Point to Michigan City Penitentiary. Meanwhile, the three bashful thugs arrested with Dillinger in Arizona were being returned by the more prosaic method of train travel to Ohio. But behind the brick walls, Dillinger was pickling at a piece of wooden morsel and making plans. On March 3rd at 8:30 in the morning, armed with his wooden toy pistol, Dillinger overawed his guards, armed himself and the Negro fellow prisoner, Herbert Youngblood, with machine guns and revolvers from the sheriff's office, and walked out, forcing guard Ernest Blunt to accompany them. Through this kitchen and out the side entrance, unmolested and unhurried, the trio went, with Blunt always a bit ahead of Dillinger's machine gun mouth. Spider Lake is near the town of Mercer. During the summer months, a popular resort, it had little or no patronage earlier in the year. It was to this point that Dillinger came with 3 other men and 3 women to Little Bohemia and spent 2 days. Emil Wanatka, the proprietor, was forced to serve the gang. Federal officers surrounded the place to surprise Dillinger, but Mrs. Wanatka's 2 dogs gave the alarm, and a blast of machine gun fire opened at Battle Royal. The body of W. Parker Baum, killed by the man. Baum makes the 14th death directly traceable to Dillinger. In Columbus, Dillinger's #1 friend, Harry Pierpont, awaits the day of his tragic march to the electric chair for his friendship. Friend #2, Charles Massey, awaits the same day and fate through the same cause, the Dillinger curse. Friend #3, Russell Clark, is faced with prison for life for the same sinister association. Outside their cells, they can hear the shuffle of sullen men marching to other cells in which their sour and unhappy lives are spent in payment of their crimes. Hopelessness broods here. That or the searing death of hot bullets fired from eager guns. That or the knife of some friend turned assassin. Crime never pays.
The electric chair was again cheated when Dillinger was lured to this North Side Chicago theater by the Woman in Red to see Manhattan Melodrama, a then very popular gangster picture. Imagine Dillinger watching the screen gangster as he began to walk the last mile. Like Dillinger, Gable in his role was a swaggering fellow. What thoughts must have passed through the mind of the woman sitting by Dillinger's side? It was past these doors that he and his girlfriend walked as they left the theater. Dillinger's sixth sense told him all was not well. His girlfriend brought back. Dillinger straight to a home. The full significance of those grim approaching men was not lost to him. Suddenly he went into action for the last time. He ran for this alley, reaching for his gun. Bullets halted his mad rush. The guns of his assailants shot through. Dillinger was dead. He lay in a pool of his own blood in the filth of an alley. His body was rushed to the morgue at police headquarters. Dillinger's hair had been dyed jet black and cut very short. His eyebrows had been plucked to a fine line, and he had grown a small black mustache. He was definitely identified as the former public enemy #1. His son sent home to his late father for burial. Can you picture the sorrow of this poor old man to have his son back home again, even though he was still in death, must have been a great load off of his aging shoulders.